You think being alone is your weakness. You wake up and nobody's checking on you. Nobody's texting. Nobody cares if you succeed or fail. And somewhere deep inside, you're convinced that this isolation means you're losing. You scroll through your feed and see everyone with their teams, their networks, their support systems. And you feel like you're fighting this war with no army. But what if I told you that being alone is not your disadvantage? What if the most dangerous player in any game is the one nobody's watching? What if solitude is the sharpest weapon you'll ever hold, and you just never learned how to use it? Machiavelli understood something that will change how you see your life right now. The prince who stands alone, who builds in silence, who moves without an audience, he's the one everyone underestimates. And that underestimation is worth more than any alliance. Because while they're busy forming groups, seeking approval, needing validation for every step, you're building something they won't see coming until it's too late. Before we go any further, if this resonates with you, hit that subscribe button. This channel, Silent Strategist, is built for people who think differently, who operate in silence, and who understand that real power doesn't announce itself. Let me paint you a picture. It's the 1500s. Italy is a bloodbath of competing powers. Families destroying each other. Alliances forming and breaking every week. Everyone's trying to build the biggest coalition, the most friends, the strongest network. And in the middle of this chaos, Machiavelli is watching. He's studying who survives and who gets crushed. And he notices something nobody else sees. The rulers who survive aren't the ones with the most allies. They're the ones who can operate independently. The ones who don't need permission. The ones who can make a decision at 3 a.m. without consulting 15 people who all have conflicting interests. You know what kills most people's dreams? It's not lack of talent. It's not even lack of resources. It's the need for consensus. The desperate craving to have everyone agree with your vision before you move. You want to start that business, but first you need your family to approve. You want to make that change, but you need your friends to validate it. You want to take that risk, but you're waiting for someone to tell you it's okay. And while you're collecting opinions like their currency, someone else, someone alone, someone who stopped asking for permission years ago is already 10 moves ahead. Here's what nobody tells you about being alone. When you have no one to impress, you stop performing. When you have no one to update, you stop documenting and start executing. When you have no audience for your struggles, you stop dramatizing them and start solving them. The person with a support group spends half their energy managing relationships, explaining decisions, defending choices, keeping everyone happy. You don't have that tax. Your energy is undiluted. Every ounce goes into the work itself. That's not a disadvantage. That's efficiency most people will never experience. Machiavelli wrote about fortuna, fortune, and virtù, skill or strength. Most people think fortune is about luck. It's not. It's about being in a position where you can seize opportunity the moment it appears. But you can't seize anything if you re-stuck in a committee meeting trying to get everyone to agree that the opportunity even exists. The solitary operator sees the opening and moves. No debate. No second-guessing from people who have nothing to lose. Just clean, immediate action. By the time the group finishes discussing whether to act, the window is closed. Think about the great builders, the ones who created empires. Most of them had a period of deep isolation. Not because they were running from people, but because they understood that certain kinds of work require absolute focus. Steve Jobs got fired from Apple, spent years in the wilderness, alone with his thoughts, refining his vision. When he came back, he didn't come back with a consensus. He came back with a complete picture that nobody else could see because nobody else had spent that time in solitude processing, thinking, building. That isolation wasn't his punishment. It was his laboratory. If you're watching this and you're alone right now, you need to understand what you actually have. You have the rarest commodity in the modern world, silence. Everyone else is drowning in noise. Opinions flying at them from every direction. Social media telling them who to be. Friends with expectations. Family with plans for their life. They can't hear their own thoughts anymore. But you can. In your solitude, you have something they don't. Clarity. The ability to think 3 moves ahead without someone interrupting with their fear disguised as advice. Now, I want you to drop a comment right now and tell me, are you building alone, or are you stuck trying to make everyone understand your vision? Because I need to know who's watching this. This channel is for strategists, for people who operate differently, and your comments help me understand how to serve you better. Also, if this is landing with you, hit that like button. Let's build this community of silent operators. Machiavelli warned about one specific trap, the dependency trap. The prince who builds his power on the support of others is always vulnerable, because those people can withdraw their support at any moment, and when they do, he collapses. But the prince who builds his power on his own capability, on skills nobody can take away, on a vision that doesn't require external validation, that prince is anti-fragile. You can't cancel what you built alone. You can't sabotage what nobody knew you were building. You can't steal credit from someone who wasn't seeking it. Let me tell you about Napoleon. Before he conquered Europe, before he became emperor, he was alone. Exiled to Corsica, reading obsessively, studying military strategy, war, politics, human nature. Nobody was watching. Nobody cared. He didn't have a mentor. He didn't have a network. He had books and time and the hunger to understand how power actually works. That solitude forged him. When he finally entered the stage, he operated on a level his enemies couldn't comprehend, because he had spent years thinking in ways they never did. They were socializing. He was studying. They were networking. He was preparing. And when the moment came, they never stood a chance. You think you need people. You think you need a team, a support system, cheerleaders. What you actually need is competence. You need skills so sharp that when you do show up, nobody can question whether you belong there. And you don't build that kind of competence in a crowd. You build it in isolation. The craftsman working alone in his shop for 10,000 hours. The writer alone with the blank page at 4 in the morning. The strategist alone with his thoughts, running scenarios, planning moves, seeing patterns nobody else sees. That's where mastery lives. Not in the networking event, not in the mastermind group. In the silent, solitary grind that nobody photographs. Here's the paradox. The people who can operate alone are the ones everyone eventually wants to work with. Because independence signals competence. When you don't need them, they want you. When you're desperate for their approval, they sense it and pull away. Machiavelli called this the power of scarcity. The prince who appears self-sufficient becomes valuable. The prince who appears needy becomes expendable. Your solitude right now is training you in self-sufficiency. And self-sufficiency is magnetic. But there's a darker layer to this. One that most people aren't ready to hear. When you're alone, you face yourself, no distractions, no one to blame, no external drama to focus on instead of your own internal work. And that's terrifying. That's why most people avoid solitude. Not because they need others for practical reasons, but because they need others to avoid looking in the mirror. The truth is, being alone forces you to confront every excuse, every weakness, every lie you've been telling yourself about why you're not where you want to be. And most people would rather stay comfortable in a crowd than face that uncomfortable truth alone. Machiavelli studied the Roman emperors. The ones who lasted weren't the ones loved by the crowds. They were the ones who could make hard decisions in isolation, who could process information without the noise of public opinion, who could see clearly when everyone else was emotional. Marcus Aurelius wrote his meditations alone. Not for publication, not for approval. Just him and his thoughts, processing how to rule, how to live, how to think. That internal dialogue, that solitary reflection, made him one of the greatest leaders in history. Nobody was clapping for him while he wrote. Nobody was validating his thoughts. He was building his philosophy in complete isolation. And that's why it's still powerful 2,000 years later. If you're still watching, share this video with someone who's building alone, someone who needs to hear this message. Because the algorithm rewards engagement, and your share helps this reach people who need strategic thinking in their lives. Now let's talk about what you do with this solitude. Because isolation without direction is just loneliness. But isolation with purpose is domination. First, you stop explaining yourself. The person who's alone doesn't owe anyone a narrative. You're not on trial. You don't need to justify your choices, your timeline, your methods. The moment you start explaining, you're seeking approval. And seeking approval is the opposite of strategic independence. Do your work. Let the results speak. Let people wonder. Let them speculate. Their confusion is your camouflage. Second, you become a student of pattern recognition. When you're alone, you have time to observe, to really see how things work. Most people are too busy talking to notice patterns. But you're watching. You see how people move, how power shifts, how opportunities appear and disappear. You're collecting data while they're collecting likes. And data is what separates the amateur from the master. Machiavelli's entire body of work is pattern recognition. He watched political events for years, saw the patterns, documented them, and created a manual for power. He did that alone, in exile, with nobody cheering him on. Third, you build systems, not relationships. This is crucial. Relationships are fragile. They depend on emotions, circumstances, mutual benefit that can evaporate. Systems are robust. A system is a skill set, a routine, a process that works regardless of who's around. You build a system for health that doesn't require a workout partner. You build a system for productivity that doesn't require a team. You build a system for income that doesn't depend on one client or one job. Systems give you independence. And independence gives you options. And options are power. Fourth, you master information control. When you're alone, you're not leaking your strategy in casual conversations. You're not revealing your next move because you're excited and need to tell someone. Loose lips sink ships. Every successful strategist understood this. They kept their plans close. They moved in silence. By the time people knew what they were doing, it was already done. Your solitude is a strategic advantage here. You can't accidentally reveal what you're never discussing. There's a concept Machiavelli explored that's relevant here. The idea of appearing versus being. Most people waste energy trying to appear successful, appear busy, appear connected. They're performing for an audience. But the solitary operator focuses on being effective, being skilled, being prepared. No performance, just development. And when the moment comes, when the opportunity appears, the person who is being ready outperforms the person who is appearing ready every single time. Let me give you a modern example. While everyone was building their personal brand on social media, documenting every moment, seeking validation, there were people quietly building businesses, acquiring skills, studying markets. Nobody knew their names. Nobody followed their journey. And then one day they emerged with something undeniable. A company, a product, a level of expertise that couldn't be faked. They didn't have the followers. They had the results. And results beat followers in every negotiation that matters. You need to understand something about the digital age. It's designed to make you feel like you're missing out if you're not constantly connected. Constantly sharing, constantly engaging, that's by design. Because engaged users are profitable users. But strategically, constant engagement is a distraction. It's noise. The most dangerous operators right now are the ones nobody's tracking, the ones not posting their process, the ones building in silence. Because when you're not performing, you're not constrained by your audience's expectations. You can pivot. You can experiment. You can fail privately and learn without the weight of public judgment. Machiavelli wrote that it's better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. But there's a deeper principle there. It's better to be underestimated than overestimated. When people underestimate you, they give you room. They ignore you. They don't see you as a threat. And that's when you operate most effectively. Your solitude right now, your invisibility, it's not a problem. It's positioning. You're being underestimated. And if you use this time correctly, by the time they realize what you've built, it's too late for them to compete. Drop a comment and tell me what you're building in silence. What's the project nobody knows about? What's the skill you're developing while everyone else is distracted? I want to know because this community is about real operators, not performers. Here's what you need to avoid. The trap of using solitude as an excuse. Some people are alone and they use it as a reason to stay stuck. They tell themselves, I'll start when I have a team. I'll move when I have support. I'll take the risk when someone believes in me. That's not strategy. That's fear wearing a disguise. True strategic solitude means you move regardless. You don't wait for conditions to be perfect. You don't wait for permission. You assess the situation, you make the decision, you execute, alone. The Roman general Scipio Africanus defeated Hannibal, the greatest military mind of his time. You know how? He studied Hannibal's tactics alone. While other generals were panicking, forming committees, debating strategies, Scipio isolated himself with maps, with battle reports, with Hannibal's previous campaigns. He reverse-engineered the genius. And when they finally met at the Battle of Zama, Scipio used Hannibal's own strategies against him. One man, studying alone, defeated the legend. Because solitary focus produces clarity that group thinking never can. Your alone time is your training ground. This is where you develop the instincts that will separate you from everyone else. You learn to trust your judgment because you have no choice. You learn to make decisions without consensus because there's nobody to consult. You learn to handle pressure alone because there's nobody to share the load. And these aren't weaknesses. These are the exact capabilities that leaders, that innovators, that people who change their circumstances must have. You're not being deprived of support. You're being forged. Machiavelli understood that the prince must sometimes act alone, must sometimes make the unpopular decision, must sometimes stand against everyone else's opinion. And the prince who can't do that, who needs constant affirmation, who crumbles without support, that prince doesn't last. History is full of rulers who were loved, who were popular, who had everyone's support, and they're forgotten. The ones we remember are the ones who stood alone when it mattered, who made the hard call, who executed the strategy nobody else had the courage to attempt. So let me ask you directly, what are you going to do with this information? Are you going to keep seeing your solitude as a curse, or are you going to weaponize it? Are you going to keep waiting for someone to join your mission, or are you going to build it so undeniably strong that people beg to be part of it? Are you going to keep seeking approval, or are you going to develop such clear vision that approval becomes irrelevant? The strategist operates alone not because he has to, but because he's learned that solitude is where clarity lives, where focus sharpens, where real work happens. The crowd is for celebration. Solitude is for creation. And if you want to create something that matters, something that lasts, something that changes your position in this world, you need to embrace the isolation. Stop fighting it. Stop resenting it. Use it. Right now, while you're watching this, someone else who's alone is building. They're not complaining about their situation. They're not wishing for a different circumstance. They're taking the raw material of solitude and forging it into advantage. And in 5 years, in 10 years, you're going to see what they built and wonder how they did it. The answer is simple. They started alone. They stayed focused. They didn't wait. If this message hit you, make sure you hit that like button and drop a comment. Tell me you're ready to operate differently.